Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This week's show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Ishura Season 2, Episode 5. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're immediately picking up where the last episode left off with the particle storm showing up in front of Toroa, Mestel Exil. I'm always going to struggle with that name. And so it becomes a situation, despite the particle storm being here, we still have Mestel Exil, specifically Kiyazuna, and Toroa kind of going back and forth. All he wants is the blasting blade, but Kiyazuna is like, no, I don't bend to anyone, so I'm not going to give you the sword back. I figured it had something to do with the particle storm, considering like she wants revenge against the particle storm, so I thought that's why she needed a blade. So I was like, why wouldn't she just be like, oh, the moment I killed the particle storm, you could have the sword? Because it seemed like it isn't important to her any other. I would assume that's the only reason why she had it, but we find out the reason later on, which I think is actually kind of a sweet and endearing reason, because she's like, oh, the reason why I was stubborn about it, because I don't care about the sword, it's not important, it's only because it was your favorite sword, it was your favorite toy, it was the favorite toy of my child, so as a mother, like, why would I give that over? Once again, she's like, I don't bend to anyone. She only did that for a child, which is actually really sweet. You know, it's kind of like like, I do care for you, you are my creation, you are my child, golem, homunculus, or whatever, you know. So there's actually something really sweet and endearing by that little in there with them. But either way, but yeah, this particle storm, we find out that it's, as I thought last episode, it's a giant, they call it a worm because it's like, oh, it's kind of akin to it's dragon kin, but it's, you know, obviously more like a snake, you know, with no wings and stuff, as in like, you know, a dragon with no wings, so it's closer to a snake. But this thing basically kind of looks like, oh, everything is particles and it's able to kind of control things. So we saw the whole situation at the beginning of the episode where that guy's begging. It's like, oh, we've given you sacrifices. So I was like, oh, so it's like, how many people from that village know about sacrifices? Which makes me wonder, does that connect to the end? If that's all like orchestrated, or is that just their actual beliefs, or is there someone orchestrating their beliefs? Like I said, we'll talk about that later, but I'm wondering, because the little girl or child, I think it was a little girl. Either way, the child from the beginning of episode 1, like, believed all that stuff because their parents believed it. So I was like, did they know what was what? Or is it just a situation of everyone was duped, only certain people amongst them knew, or what? Because he looks like he's of their people, so I don't know. But yeah, the particle storm was just kind of like, yeah, I'm not sticking around, and just, you know, yeah, just basically it looks at everything as beneath them. So it's like, yeah, I'm gonna do my thing. And, you know, especially because he was looking down on, because like, oh, you're minions. But I think it's also like any other species in this world is beneath it, because it looks like it treats itself like a god. So I knew that obviously Kuro was nearby, but I was not expecting, like, when that large like flame from the sky came, because like Toro is trying to use his blades, but they're not working. Um, I mean, I love that whole sequence of just like it's on Kiyozuna's vehicle, and she starts slowing down, and he tries to use the blade, because I guess she was trying to like not two birds with one stone, but it's like, I'll slow down enough for the particle storm to kind of kill you, but it's not. And but yeah, they get interrupted, the whole fight, because Melee is working with Horatia, and Kuro is acting as his eyes. And even though he's all the way back there in that village, he's shooting from far away, but doesn't make a direct shot. It's enough to disrupt the storm, but it's not enough to kill the thing. Which obviously is making Kuro more and more frustrated, because he's like, if my eyes were better, I should have gotten this shot. Like, it should have happened. And he's getting more and more frustrated because Melee shots get near, but they're not direct hits. Which Melee is taking advantage of the situation. He's like, all right, for every like shot I'm taking, you're going to do more and more for this village. You're going to like do whatever you can to help them. And the guy's like, I'm just a communications officer. He's like, yeah, then communicate to someone that can actually make it happen, someone important. So Kiyazuna, Kiyazuna herself had orchestrated and made a weapon. I mean, I don't know if it was initially in what's his face, Mestel Exel's like natural design, because I mean it does adapt and stuff like that, so it probably creates weapons upon situations, but maybe there's stuff that's already instilled, because even during the fight with Toroa, Kiyazuna was like, oh, if I wasn't nearby, because obviously her child isn't going to do anything, because Toroa was like, oh, like, you can't take a chance to hit me with any of those fancy weapons because you might hit your mom. But it's like, she's like, if I wasn't here, there's plenty of weapons it could use against, I think specifically Toroa to kind of end things, but maybe also the particle storm. But essentially, the way she was describing it's kind of like almost like it was heating up the particle storm. Like, it looked like it was almost like sonic waves, but maybe like that frequency was causing some heating type of situation, because she was almost like fire is going to be useless, so that's why we concocted this weapon. I guess it almost kind of like, I was misunderstanding. It looked like it was like a sonic wave type of weapon, like using sound. And then because the bastard was talking about like not running away before, but then immediately runs away like a coward. I'm like, oh, that's funny. So I was like, oh, that's fascinating. He was talking all kinds of shit, and then you end up running away. But then ultimately, like I said, Kuro's frustrated because Kune wants to help, but Kuro's like, no, like, what do you are you intent on dying? But it's also because she wants to do whatever she can to help Kuro. But he's like, oh, if my eyes were better. But then Kune says, like, nothing's wrong with your eyes. And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, the fact is your eyes can see everything. Maybe it was on purpose that you missed. And he's like, what are you talking? And then he kind of pieces it together. He's like, he doesn't realize his power is so powerful. And they even talk about this when they're doing Kuro's proper introduction, that his powers are so like omnipotent that even he doesn't fully realize, like, stuff will happen subconsciously because he won't realize, like, oh, his eyes have been messing up on purpose because they're trying, because he realizes like there's a soldier from Eurasia nearby. It's like, oh, the plan is the moment he kills the particle storm, they're going to kill him. And I'm like, well, understandable, because like, well, first and foremost, they can't take the chance that your eyes fall into anyone else's hands. Like, we need to kind of nip you in the bud. We can't take the chance you go off, do your own thing, but also we can't let anyone else have you. Like, your eyes see too much, and we can't let you see what we are up to. But yeah, subconsciously, his eyes were trying to save him, because it's like, he's like, I saw a future, even if I was kind of denying it without even realizing it, that me completing this would be the end of me. So my eyes are purposely getting near the particle storm, but not letting a direct shot happen. Because Kuro finally realizes, he's like, right, my eyes, I've never wanted to see death. I never wanted people to die. So my one wish has always been, I wanted to save someone. And so he puts Kune aside and hides her under his hat, and he goes like, fine, I'll accept things as they are, because I've been able to do what I wanted to do. If I can save one person, then it's all okay. So he uses his eyes, and he has melee fire a direct shot and hits the particle storm. And, you know, we find out also, apparently he's a leprechaun, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, it makes sense. We have, like, giants and dwarves, and we have vampires, so it's like, is it out of pocket to have a leprechaun? I wasn't expecting that to be, like, what he is. So that's interesting. I'm wondering, I mean, they call him, like, Kuro, but yeah, it was like something, and then like the leprechaun, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then he catches arrows to the back. You're like, damn. I was like, please don't. I was like, damn. Because I was about to say, it seems like Kuro's going to be like our main through line this season. It kind of seemed like, but once again, don't get too attached on the character. Any character can catch it. Like, once again, it's going to bum me out because he was our first introduced character. Or did we get introduced to Yuno first? I don't remember now if we got introduced. Like, the first episode is titled after Sojiro, but I can't remember if we met him or Yuno first. I think we met Yuno first, but maybe we met Sojiro first. Either way, like, I'm going to be bummed when Sojiro eventually dies, because it's got to happen. There's no way he's going to survive, even though he's tough guy so far. It's like, you know, we've met some pretty other tough contenders, so especially this season. So I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, the particle storm was dealt with. It wasn't even Kiyazuna, which bums her out because she was all about getting her revenge, because Toro was like, yo, now that I have the blasting blade back, I can kill this thing like I promised you. She's like, no, it's my target. Mestelexo, kill both of them. But it's just kind of like, it was kind of a moot point now, because now it's been taken care of. But then Kune comes down and she begs them for help, which Kiyazuna was kind of had no reason to help. But then Toroa was like, okay, so he ended up doing the right thing, even if it cost him his life. So he was kind of impressed with what Kuro did. So I was like, right. So And because of that, he was like, all right, fine, Kiyazuna, you give me your vehicle, I will give you the blasting blade. And he sticks it in the ground, luckily, and they were able to get to Kuro in time, so they were able to save him. And Kune kind of confesses, like, I wanted to save you because you, even if you hate me or dislike me, like, I wanted to save you because she's like, because I'm in love with you, I love you, and I want. Well, there's a difference because I'm like, is she in love with him or does she just love him? I mean, it's probably one and the same, but still, the fact is that she cares for him deeply, and she's just like, I want to see you smile more. And so seeing him smiling, I was like, oh, that's really sweet. You're just like, but then you're also like, the series is so tragic. It's going to, like, even if he survives, eventually she's probably going to get killed, and that's going to send him off the deep end. Or we're going to have it just like very Romeo and Juliet-esque where they both die. You're just like, I'm just mentally and emotionally preparing myself for just how sad this series is going to get. Because once again, oh, let's get to know these characters a little bit, and then we're just going to like kill them, you know? Especially the longer they're around, the more that's going to hurt when they eventually die, but we'll see. So I thought that was so fascinating, though. Um, so I'm curious to see what's next for Kiyazuna and Mesalexel. I mean, obviously there is the royal, like the tournament that's coming up, so it makes sense. So I wonder, are they going to stick with Toroa for a while, or they probably will eventually go their separate ways. The sword was left behind because, once again, like Mesalexo found his rival. He's like, I don't want to take the sword because like I want to get the sword after I've beaten Toroa. And for her, it's like, oh, you found something, you have your wish fulfilled. Like, you found someone you want to defeat. And so it's like, right, we'll honor it and leave the blade here. We won't take it. We'll leave it here, and it'll be something where it's like, okay, so Toroa could always come back and get it, I guess, if he wants to. But also, once again, it has no purpose to Kiyazuna anymore because like Mesalexel like has found something more important, and that was a rival. But maybe that sword will always stay there. It's kind of like, all right, we'll circle back to this eventually if someone doesn't come up and grab it later. But yeah, I'm sure like Toro could also move on. There's probably other enchanted weapons he can ultimately end up going after too. So it's gonna be interesting to see where things go on that front. And then finally, we had the ending, which I did not see coming. We heard people talking, and then all of a sudden we see the creature still. I'm like, oh, because like we were in a desert area, and now we're in like a watery area, like kind of like a woodsy area. I'm like, what's going on here? And then Linares shows up, and she's like, you didn't even remember why you were trying to get to Eurasia in the first place. And she's like, no, basically no one will ever know why. And I was like, it took me a second because I was like, what is that? Why was it going to Eurasia? And then I forgot. I was like, oh my God. And then she said the whole thing about the maiden. It's like, that's the source of the infection. I was like, what infection? I was like, oh my God. I loved that reveal. I was like, that's so good. And then, once again, you thought it was just set up for the particle storm of like that person dying at the beginning. But it's like, no, it was so on purpose. I was like, the layers, because she's the carriage she came across in episode 1 was Linares's. Oh, you're just like, Jesus. That's what I was bringing up before. I'm like, was that always like that religious group's like, I mean, it's probably just a thing of Linares knows. She knows that group because she's probably been around long enough to know the religion. And so she was just waiting for the perfect person to come about, the sacrificial person. And so that little girl getting sacrificed was her end. And basically that's why he was heading towards Eurasia, because she had them going that direction for whatever reason. So I'm like, what is your reason for going after Eurasia? I guess like maybe it's something they have that you want, or maybe this is some long deep-seated revenge you have with that entire country. Maybe specifically someone among. I mean, she's already got someone amongst its higher ranked people. Like she has an insider already. So I'm like, what are you playing at? Maybe she said in episode 2 and it's just been a while, so I'm not remembering. But I mean, she already has an insider and she had a powerful weapon on its way. But it's like, yeah, I guess because he served his purposes. Because he was like, how do you know my name? She's like, oh, you don't remember, but we've already met. I was just, that was ingenious. I was like, that's good writing. That's a really good twist. It's like, and that also showed you how deadly she is. It's like, who knows who's infected? Because if you don't even know you're infected until it's revealed. So it's like, you're her puppet on a string. You're not even self-aware. So it's like, unless she wants you to be self-aware, but it's like, you'll never know like who's under her thrall or not. I was like, that makes her so deadly. And she basically had the particle storm kill himself with his own particle. He's like, oh, I'm turning into particles. It's like ironic you've done that to so many and didn't care about it. But now it's like, yeah, you thought you were so high and mighty, and now here you are turning to particles yourself. It's like, feels very befitting after everything that you've done. It felt kind of like, oh, kind of your just desserts. But yeah, I have no sympathy for you, but you know. Either way, I was like, oh, that was so ingenious. So I'm so curious to see what other contingencies, what other plans she has in place. Because they had brought up the blasting sword. I think they were talking about it. So I'm like, did just Linares want it or need it for something? You know, why they were specifically talking. I think it was like her followers and stuff talking about the blasting sword. I think it's all the people that the people that are kind of like her right hand people. We met in episode 2. I think it was them talking amongst themselves. I'm like, why is the blasting sword important? Like, well, I guess because it was the one enchanted weapon that was kind of up in the air, like because they knew Kiyazuna had it, so maybe it was like it was so like out of Taroa's hands, so it would have been a lot easier to get than anything else. But then you're also thinking like, well, Taroa interacted with the particle storm, so I'm like, well, cause I'm about to say Mesalexel's situation being what it is, like maybe Linares wouldn't be able to control him. So, but I was like, well, Taro was in that situation, so there's always a possibility. It's like, could he have gotten infected in it? I don't remember if like how her infection works. Like, it has to be direct, right, from her. It can't be like she's infected someone and that something can spread the infection like that. I don't think it can work like that. I mean, even though it was through the particle storm, like other than that, Taro had no direct interaction with the particle storm other than the actual storm itself. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. Like I said, I think she has to directly infect you. I don't think it can be like a subsequent, like it went from the particle storm to Taroa. I don't think it can work like that, but I could be mistaken. We don't know the limits of her capability. So fascinating turn of events. It's interesting too because this was supposed to be like the calamity that was approaching. So I'm curious, is that trying to imply the particle storm was a calamity, or is Linares like the calamity? Maybe that calamity's kind of been stayed for a bit. It's kind of a stay of execution type of thing. But we'll ultimately have to wait to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. We're basically hitting the halfway point if this season's like 12 episodes like the first one was. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.